Look at this crowd. This is great. I guess we're going to talk about soil. I get a little bit nervous when I pull a 100,000-pound tree or have to talk to a bunch of people, but I think a lot of things that we do, we talk about soil and organics, and we're going to talk about fracturing. So I'm going to show you guys some things, kind of a journey. Might get off topic a little bit, but just want to let people know about the opportunities through the proper knowledge and education and years of dedication. There's some guys here that I know of that have spent their whole life doing this. And the knowledge is invaluable, and their passion is even more invaluable to what we do. Never thought in my life I grew up. I think the bio talks about, I grew up in New Jersey. Don't hold that against me. It's where my parents conceived me, but grew up in Princeton Nurseries, followed a passion when I was a young kid. And I love to harvest trees, and that's what I do. I want to be the best at, or teach a group of men to be the best at moving a particular plant from point A to point B. And after years and years of trial and error, a few mistakes, quite a few mistakes, we're able to do things like this. David's company has been involved in some things that we're a part of that have made this really successful, but everybody said that you couldn't move trees of this caliber and be successful. As you can see, this is cool. It's fun to do. It's enjoyable. It's challenging. Been involved in a lot of different things. And moving a tree from Florida to Georgia or New Jersey to Georgia is a task all in itself, but it has something to do with the plant. Obviously, I don't think we give the plant enough credit and the soil that we attach it to. I don't know what the format for most companies are, but to be successful at this, I'm very adamant about soil testing, where you're going with it. I'm not so much worried about the tree, where it's coming from, because it's gone. It's going to its new location. So going forward, we're going to talk about organics, but I think the plant has the largest say in how to manufacture the soil and create an environment that will continue to grow, which is based on minerals. But in order to move trees like this, it's not like I'm feeling this today. I just think I'm going to treat the plant material with how I feel. We do a lot of soil testing to see what's actually in the soil and see where we're deficient. We look more at parent materials, and David taught me a lot about that, or suggested that, is that when you go plant trees in an area, that you have to look at your parent material, because you can't move that much soil, but you can amend it and you can maintain it. And a lot of people don't do that. They just throw something in a hole and go buy organic material for $900 and don't even blend it with the native soil and throw it in there and expect the best. That's not a good method. But so where it's coming from, not as interested only in the infiltration capacities of that. The types of soil, organic, clay, parent material, a lot of what we've always talked about through several of these. But we're finding that through certain technology and ergonomics, there's so many great fermentation process. There's so many companies that can manufacture liquid microbes, where we're deriving all of our nutrients and minerals from, which makes it better. So we'll never mimic, or we'll never duplicate nature, but we get pretty close to it. And I think the knowledge of the materials that are available to us in our industry make all things possible. You know, when you're moving trees, we moved a tree 2 years ago, weighed 169,000 pounds. Did we just move it and plant it and hope for the best? We studied the soil. We drew prune for 2 years prior to the harvest to store energy in the plant, to build it up and prepare it for the root pruning and harvesting methods. That way, when you injure a root, the plant automatically goes through its cycle to repair. So if you're deficient in energy or stored capacity, you're hoping for the best. And I think we should explore all those things. So anything's possible with the right equipment, the right technology, and the right product. So somebody said to me, Jeff, you look good. I don't feel good, but you look good, but I don't feel good. So what do? I go to the doctor and I do blood work. And I suggest that with plant material. Like we had a project years ago, brought in a bunch of organic material, great, blending it with the native soil that was on the property. Nobody tested the material coming in. It was loaded with iron. Well, it created a problem on the project and tied up everything that could be available to these plants because it had so much iron in it. So really believe in testing. You know, I've been doing it a lot of years, but I see this all the time in a mass. Like I can't like checking the air pressure in a tire. I go over there and kick it. What did that tell me? Well, it's got air in it. Doesn't tell me how much. So when I look at the soil, I can't tell you what mineral base is in there and at what level minerals are in that soil. So through fracturing and all these great products, I've seen by breaking and decompacting the soil and using the right organic material in that soil, you can accelerate organic matter in the soil. I mean, I've got some documentation on this. So if you can get it in there, you can create organic matter in the soil. The plant is the number one thing. We're talking about, oh, we got to do this and we got to do that and we got to do this, but we never hear many people talking about the plant. That's a machine right there. That's everything. That plant is so smart, way above my head. And it's a sugar producing machine. It just has to reconnect with minerals, right? And water to move it. So if you can get the plant in that very productive mode, it's going to produce exudates, it's going to produce the muscigels and all the things for the cap roots to plow through the soil and do what they're supposed to do. And a little bit of work, you can produce this in the soil with the right knowledge and materials. And David, I think your company's using a lot of these products, but that's why you're having the success that you're having. So I'll show you some things in here about, like, you see the level of organic matter in that hole. Now I dug a tree up in that hole, stump in the ground, and 360 degrees around that tree, as far as I could dig with a 44,000 pound excavator, I found roots. I chased roots on a white oak 13 feet and found a clump of fibrous roots at the bottom. And everything you read, everything you hear, this is all the things that well, that's not supposed to happen. Roots don't grow past 24 inches and this, and you hear all these things. So I was curious. I'm like, what's going on here? I'm going to figure something out, right? I'm going to find something in this soil, mineral wise, that I'm going to have an edge over everybody. Well, that was just a grand thought, but there was a chert rock in the soil, red clay. I pounded the rock into powder, sent it to the lab, sent the clay. The clay was, luxury levels that were supposed to be. The rock was 4.7. It was very acidic. And I'm thinking, well, I didn't learn, I don't see anything here that's going to change the world. So, but I started looking at the profile of the hole, and I noticed a pattern with the rock. It looked like somebody had placed the rock in the clay evenly. So when it rains, the water can infiltrate the soil. There's pore space in the soil. There's all these benefits that we're not looking at because we dig holes all the time. So we're very lucky and very fortunate to see so many things that you don't see, or you're not going to go digging up somebody's yard looking for stuff like that. So this is like a common sense thing for me, because that's all I know is to look at maybe the obvious. Maybe I'm looking for something greater than really what's there, but you can see the amount of the organic, when you look at the base of that material, that's probably 5 or 10% organic material there, right? So, and we need all of it. David, what do you see in that?
I see a pretty nice organic layer and some pretty heavy clay right below it.
I loaded it on the truck. Now, pretty cool because every day when, you know, we harvest so much, we have the opportunity to look at stuff like this. So when you look at that, bare root, B&B, equivalent to maybe a 5-gallon when it was planted. The plant that was planted there was root pruned several times, right? To establish a well-rounded root system that could attach pathways into the soil at not just 3 spots, but a multitude of spots. So that's pretty good. I mean, that plant's producing an organic matter. So I know that field was plowed. I know it had a subsoiler in it, and I know it had a plant about 5-gallon. We just recently dug 20-foot magnolias out of there. Well, that, you know, I'm building brown dirt. But how? The plant's producing and connecting with the soil, the things that it needs in order to make this whole cycle work. The thing that mind boggles me here with that organic matter that's there is they spray the hell out of Roundup up and down these rows all the time, or as needed, which is all the time, right, with the weeds. So I'm thinking, you know, tractor down this side, tractor down this side, it's constantly getting the right amount of Roundup put down, but it's still producing organic matter. Somehow all the microbes in the soil overpower, you know, the Roundup's supposed to block the uptake of micronutrients, but yet nature is so powerful if you give it a few things that it needs to do this, and it's producing organic matter. But the plant is so important in this role. It's the key role in all of this. I can tell you that soil is at 6.8 to 7.1, and a proportionate balance in minerals, meaning clay, 70% calcium, 12% magnesium, 8% potassium, and then on down the ladder. So proportionately, that soil has a mineral balance in there that can create this food chain for the microbes, and because it needs minerals to do so. So these are just obvious things that I'm looking at. And you know, that's red clay. I mean, that's you could throw that off the Empire State Building and still wouldn't have a bad root ball come out of that. But parent material, so important to look at on these job sites. You're not going to find the resources or the money to have somebody dig up 3 million yards of dirt and change it. That's just not going to happen. I think we've all tried to battle that, but you can maintain it. And over time, you know, you can maintain the plants and the type of materials that you use to maintain the parent material that's under the ground, that's always moving forward. So just something to look at and something to talk about with people that have the knowledge and the ability how to combat this on a project. So roots. The picture on the left is something that we created. We had to root prune a tree to move this tree, and we were going to move it in the summer. So we had a window that we had to cut the roots, grow as many fiber roots as possible. And all I did was in Shadydale, they have a yard over there. They manufacture all kinds of soil products there. And so we basically aged pine fines, and they treated they limed the pile to bring the pH up a little bit because it was a little low, but they brought it up to like 6, 7, or 8. And we cut the roots through that in a trench, and that's what we got in less than 3 months on the left. And watered it extensively for 6 weeks. And the pine fines are hydrophobic initially, right? And then after about a week and a half, they become hydrophilic. And they do what they're supposed to do. So the first week and a half or 2 weeks, you got to work with it. Otherwise you wick all the water out of the ground and dry everything up. But once it broke down and did what it was supposed to do, we basically really didn't water those plants after that and grew root after root after root. And the longer that sits there, the better it gets. The picture on the right was on a property that I found. You could see the rock in there, but that basically was a seed that hit the ground in an environment. And I've been doing this a long time, and I will say this, and I've seen the best, and I root prune all the time. I mean, I beat that stump to death with that backhoe. But what you don't see was 360 degrees around that trunk in every direction, that times 60 or more were the roots that I pulled up out of there from a seed that tree grew. I didn't talk to it. I didn't fertilize it. I didn't water it. I didn't do anything to it. The cool thing was every species of tree that I pulled up had the exact same root pattern. And that's unheard of, but every species of tree. So I'm looking at the organic matter, I'm looking at the clay, looking at, nobody took care of it. And I was able to find that, and it was obvious. So when I dug the hole, as far down as I could dig with that excavator, 360 degrees in that hole, in every direction was roots growing everywhere. So, I like to find things like that to point out maybe some common sense stuff. I'll die trying to figure it out. This will lead to the end when we talk about fracturing, but pathways in the soil and pore space and aggregate. And there's a lot of things printed about, don't put gravel in the hole. And who here has dug up a sewer pipe and saw a root running at 900 miles an hour alongside of it, right? Well, I was digging in Knoxville, Tennessee one time. I was asked to move some trees from an old estate to a new estate. And in the old days, they put dry wells in, gutter pipes out in the yard over there, and then dumped the water into the drain, basically a drain field. They just fill a hole full of gravel. So I was digging a big Norway spruce and got over there, got halfway around the ball, number 57s. So I don't know if you know much about digging a tree, but when you have a fine coarse particle and an aggregate, they want to separate. And so I'm getting into this number 57 thinking, I know what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to backfill it and go to something else. So the more I dug, the more I found that every inch between the number 57s, the pore space was filled with fibrous roots. So infiltration capacity, pore space, movement. If trees are just like people, they're lazy, they're going to take the least path of resistance. So if a root turns out and goes, it's going. If it has no need to dig in, it won't dig in. And I'm not a big fan of spoon feeding everything that you do. I have plants on my property in Knoxville. Deodar cedars, right? I hate that tree. I've never had good luck moving it. And so I had bought 5 deodar cedars, stuck them in there, watered them the first year, hand watered, no irrigation, fertilized them 3 years later, and I've never touched them since, right? And they're 35 foot of the most gorgeous deodar cedars that you've ever seen. So I know, and I'm going to have an opportunity to harvest those in the next 12 months. And I'm excited to dig in there and see, by leaving it alone, how that plant has had to go and get water and get nutrients and stuff, and to see how the root pattern is in the soil. But so there's a combination of things of organic material, and we get a lot of red clay, and we do a lot of work at Select Trees, and I'm in every hole looking at everything and every block that they push up and looking at root patterns and stuff, and they're growing in that red clay. And and finding roots at, 36 inch. When you look and study the hole, 36, 40 inches down, you have roots 360 degrees going in every direction. They do a fantastic job at developing that plant early on, that it has that, instead of having 5 arteries to your heart, you got 967. That's a better deal, right? So that's kind of how they develop their root system early on. But growing in clay, things you see that aren't supposed to happen, fertilizers, chemicals. So there's a relationship, and it's not to get out of whack and out of balance. It's a little bit of everything. Me as a harvester, I got to have the hardest red clay that's known to mankind when I'm moving stuff 100,000 pounds, 60,000 pounds, because we feel like we're good at what we do. But you have to look at soil types and all these factors to make that work at that kind of weight and mass and what you're trying to do, root biomass, canopy biomass. So we like red clay. And I've seen some things in pure red clay, kind of shocking. So, plant the tree 6 feet out of the ground so it doesn't drown. Wrong. That's just so wrong. There's better ways and techniques and understanding how to manage your soil, how to use your soil properly, how to use all those liquid microbes that are available, vermiplex, right? Worm casting, liquid worm casting. Just incredible. Now via the fracturing machine, you're over there. It's like, I can drop this on the ground and hope that it gets 4 foot in the ground. Yeah, maybe in this rainy season, I might have a chance to do that. I don't have time to wait. I got to get it in now. I got to make this go to work. So some of the products that are manufactured now by some incredible people, we have the equipment to inoculate the soil, to create micropores and macropores in the soil. We have the ability to take things that we couldn't do before the old day. Like, how many people are you going to get to work to go out there with a spike? Like I was taught, with a hammer and a spike, and beat holes in the ground and fertilize stuff. That list is very small, the people you're going to get to do that. So you got to think of ergonomics and even the drills. We did a test one time with the drills. One of Still's great drills. Just, all you could put on that drill got that deep. And in the same time, via the fracturing machine, fractured the ground from where I'm standing 10 feet that way and busted the ground all to pieces. And that guy was still over there trying to get that auger in the ground, so I'm big about, common sense things. When I can fracture the ground, create fissures in the soil, and move product into the soil that can change the surface area of the soil, you can accelerate time. I've seen it. I've seen in 12 months, just by being able to fracture and get the right product in the ground, the organic and earthy feel of that soil. So you got to have pathways. Roots are big in the arborist community. That's what you guys do. It's what you study. So I encourage breaking the ground up. We're moving trees like that aren't supposed to live, and we're reconnecting, and they're doing great. They're flourishing and have been for years. So, I encourage getting in the ground. You want to get down there, you got to go down there. You can't throw it on top of the ground and hope for the best. That ditch over there is going to look nice and green because that's where the largest percentage of what you're doing is going to end up. So changing infiltration capacity. I got involved in the fracture machine 8 years when it basically was first introduced. And in 8 minutes, I realized, and I'm a tree harvester. That's what I do. That's where I make my money. I don't make my money aftercare and all this stuff. But from an ergonomic standpoint, I saw it break the hardest ground I've seen in my life, less than 8 seconds. So I just realized that it changed infiltration capacity. If you can change infiltration capacity, you're going to use less water, more effectively, more directed to the roots that actually can go to work for you, pull water and nutrients through the plant without creating an anaerobic condition. So I've tested that, I've seen that, and I've seen it work. So you got to get pathways, you got to get down there, you got to get the material down there. Some of these trees might need a little bit of help getting them started. Injure a root, I suggest injuring the root. You want to reproduce more roots and more pathways, just go in there and bust the root wide open. We've done it. Roots like that. I cut roots like that on trees. That tree's going to die just as sure as the day is long. No. A lack of knowledge will kill that tree. The plant's pretty powerful, so pathways are important. The only way to get in there is go in there, break it up. You know, all the tools that are available. Infiltration, water, air, all good stuff. I was bored on a Saturday and a big Nellie R. Stevens at the house. Wanted to water it. I'm watering it. I'm laying on the ground enjoying the day, right? Passionate, be passionate. I'm watching the water run down the hill. I'm like, well, that's useless, right? I'm not getting anything in the ground. So I went around to the shop and I got the fracturing machine. Went over there, poked like 72 holes around this tree. And it was easy. I didn't kill myself because of the equipment that's available now. You don't have to kill yourself doing this. So then put the machine back, went back over there with the hose, laid the hose on the ground, never saw any water after that. So 100% of the water was going in the ground. What I was doing before, probably 90% of that water was running down the hill. So Neil and I talked about it one time about, what are you treating? I water the dirt, the tree takes the water up, so I'm just watering the dirt. You're treating soil. So when you get any lab reports back, it's pounds per acre. So you can break that down to cubic yards, is what you need to do, because most of the clientele that you work for and I work for is not going to let us go through their estate property with a John Deere farm tractor plowing up the ground. That's just not going to happen. So I'm a big fan of the fracturing unit because I can change the infiltration capacity. I can take, what are you treating the tree with? I don't know, I'm just mayonnaise today. That's what I'm feeling like. You do your soil report, and when you do your treatment, you need to get, there's a percentage in soil chemistry that can create soil fertility. And look up William Albrecht. I think it's really good. But when we treat a tree, you measure the cubic yards of soil around the tree that you're going to treat. When you mix up your fertilizer, you add whatever you need to do to bring those levels up. So you can always constantly adjust what your soil needs in your mix and then deliver that mix, because it's designed for that many cubic yards of soil. So it's being more specific, because I don't know. I mean, I've been buffaloed in my journey through all of this, and I don't like it. I don't like aloof answers. And so we worked very hard to say, I need to know the cubic yards of soil around that tree that I'm treating. Because I can't come to you and be honest. And like, I know that I can put 99% of the product in that tank in that many cubic yards of soil at 33 inches of depth. I feel good about that. I feel good about repairing that soil. All I got to do is get the minerals in place in the right proportions, and nature knows what to do. Because just like that picture prior in those holes, round up, everything you would not want to do is being done, and there's still organic matter being produced in the soil. So if you have, that's a well mineralized soil. So that shows me, that's one of the reasons what I've noticed through the years, when you have a balance of minerals in that soil, you can accelerate that process with organic matter and create the microbes to do it. So infiltration, more specifically, whatever your recipe is to feed that plant. This year I did something and I had great success. I figured it out. right? Next year you do it, you don't have the same success. Why? If you did it right, you would have taken the soil samples, found out what minerals were in your soil, taken your treatment, whatever you treated it with, and delivered it to a specific cubic yards of soil, right? Now you have a starting point to collect data. And that's what we're supposed to do as professionals. So, and I've done it early on because all I cared about was moving that tree from point A to point B. But when a tree dies on somebody, why? Well, hell, I don't know why, I did this. So, so I go on these landscape projects all the time. And how much water are you giving the tree? 15 minutes. What does that mean? How much is 15 minutes? Well, I don't know. So nobody measures the amount of water that they put on the ground. They have no ability to make adjustments. They're making wholesale changes in their tactics. So I'm working on a project now, and we're coming through winter. And so put 60 gallons a week through the drip, deliver it to these plants, but deliver it on 3 different days. So 20 gallons each time. And then we'll go in after a week and a half and evaluate the soil, the moisture content in the soil. If the moisture content's rolling off to the bottom of the hole. So we evaluate that. So through the drills and the techniques, you're going to be able to better diagnose an environment and know how to make adjustments, because water's key. Too much, too little, too late. I did everything you said to do. No, you didn't. Because you don't know how to answer the basic question. So infiltration, you'll use less water more effectively. Water management, right? I can put 300 gallons of water on top of a clay root ball and watch 267 gallons of it roll down the hill and get 30 gallons. Or I can take this vehicle here and get 60 gallons specifically in that environment that I want to actually, where it can actually take the water up into the plant. And by doing so, by not overwatering, right, you're going to keep the air right in the soil, the pore spaces right in the soil. I've had a problem with this one time on a job in Knoxville. Amended soil, topsoil, it was like you could grow concrete in the soil. It was so good, right? Checking the moisture. Oh, this is just perfect. Looking at the tree, it looks like it's drying up. And so then I started probing the ball. The ball was just come out of red clay, which is not a problem. It was dry. It was as hard as the ground, the road. So we quickly infiltrated the root ball. We did vertical mulching. We put diatomaceous earth in there, watered it. And one night we turned that tree from a pale looking weak color in from 7 o'clock at night till 8 o'clock in the morning, and it illuminated that plant in 8 hours. So, that's how important is delivering what you need to deliver more specifically. Talk about, managing our water better, groundwater and stuff that we pump into the ground, gets into the groundwater, gets carried to our creeks and everything like that. This technology, if you use it more specifically and target, you'll use less fertilizer to be 4 times as productive, closer to timing of growth stages and things of that nature. So if you learn those things, it can actually benefit you. Like we found since we've been using the fracturing machine that we've used less product, but we're more targeted. So it's like taking an Uzi and taking this wall out, or taking a sniper rifle and knock the center out over there. That's what this machine offers the industry. The industry's a little bit reluctant to adapt to this technology, but everything that we've done, everything that we found right now is getting water in the ground and moving. Like if you read about humates, you can read until you fall asleep. But David, a good friend of yours, we discussed this. The minute you contact the soil colloid, you've changed the surface area. So if I dump this bottle of water on this desk, wanting it to hit that floor, I might never get it there. But when you can break the ground and create fissures in the soil and move that solution through that soil and contact that surface area, it's not going to happen overnight. You need repetitive treatments. It's taken years to compact that soil. You can't do it in one treatment. But you can get the party started if you have this machine and the right product. You can change the surface area of a heavy clay soil and make it become productive for you. The list with the microbes in the soil biota, what can happen when you get the humates in the ground. So pretty cool technology. Those three things right there can change the game, but you got to want to change the game. You know, we talk about it all the time. You have to be committed. Harvesting is one thing. The arborist community is another thing. The landscape contracting is another thing. Most landscape contractors, they want the job, they want the install, they want to move to the next install. They're not really looking at it like the arborist community. They're over the edge passionate about what they do. And I agree with them about that. And I'm the same way about what I do. And even the aftercare part of it. But so a lot of things get slipped through the cracks because we don't communicate the right things in the industry. The landscaper wants to go to the next job. Customer feels the impact. I love what I do. I absolutely do. But if I don't have a customer and a happy customer, it's all over. So I'm not going to sit here and throw mud at anybody. I'm going to find the answer at whatever cost I have to say, what was the problem here? What's the missing link? So I think if we look at certain things in our industry, we make some of these changes and we blend all of the communities together, we're going to have a better situation with plant material and the aftercare and the success. Like we've done so many different projects. And I did this one particular project in Knoxville, and I was on the off season of a big harvest. And I said, well, you know, I'm going to be home most of the summer, so I'm going to take care of this project. I said, I want to see what the problem is. And the job had from here down to the bottom, there was topography changes, the water runoff, everything challenging on a landscape project. So I took care of the project. And we moved in 12-inch caliper trees, 20-foot hollies. I mean, just a medley of plant material. And we never had a problem. We had one problem with the infiltration in the root ball. That was it. Quickly learned from that. And from there on since, every tree that we plant, we infiltrate the root ball. We suggest it to anyone that plants any new tree to infiltrate the root ball. So, you know, we can learn a lot from our environment, how to be successful, but we need to blend all these communities together and educate even further about the problems that we are having in our industry, because we're having a lot of problems. Because I speak to a lot of people and they say they do more now than they ever have, and they're having more loss than they ever had. But there's reasons for that, but you got to want to get up and figure those reasons out. So, you know, I like this because you can quickly change that environment to where I'm not going to get into it as deep as some of the guys that are off the deep end with getting into what they do. I mean, I happen to like it, but you could tell a guy infiltrate the root ball. This is why. He might remember half of what you say, but it's a game changer on new installations, even on existing projects. It's just a game changer when you look at those three things right there.
And I actually have one question while you're there. What is the soil fracturing device that's being used here? Someone asked that question a minute ago. What is the device, the soil fracturing device?
It's a pneumatic hammer. It's supplied by air, obviously, but there's another line that's attached to it that you can move fluid through and inoculate the soil with whatever it is you're trying to remedy the soil for. Quickly, in seconds, you can fracture into the hardest ground that there is. And pump your solution into that soil and you just change the dynamic of the soil instantly. So we've been involved in a lot of the upgrades in the system, feeding the manufacturer data that you can purchase this unit. We went to a rotary screw air compressor, which is off the charts, unlimited supply of air. And it hits so much harder. There's a bigger lance involved. The unit's been designed to, except if the motor blows up on site on the air compressor, everything is rebuildable. So if you send your crew to a job 3 hours away and something happens, I got to go back to the shop. I'll do this treatment tomorrow. That's not profitable for anybody. So we worked with AirTech Tools to say, listen, I've traveled around the country moving trees from New Jersey to Miami, Florida. And I don't want to get there and say my shovel broke. I got to go back to Georgia to get my shovel or something happens. So the new unit is like incredibly tremendous when it has extra pumps. You have to train your staff to be, and hopefully that guy running that's a little bit mechanically inclined, but everything in that trailer, exception to the air compressor, can be replaced on a job site right there. Anything can be replaced, which is pretty cool because time is money, right? So you want to get there and you want to get it done. A lot of other things that we're working on that haven't been introduced yet, and it's all off of automation. It's excavators with the pneumatic hammer on it. That way, if you get on a large property like you guys work on, you send somebody on a mini excavator out there on a project and they can sit on it instead of, you know what the lance is. I mean, you got to be in shape. But if you could sit there on an excavator all day and hammer the ground and just hit that button, you're going to be much more productive. You know, the user-friendly stuff comes way into play like that. So there's a lot of neat things that are going to spin off of this. But if you don't believe it, it changes infiltration capacity instantly. And I'll argue that with anybody. Because when you water the ground and it runs off, when you fracture the ground and it runs in, that's infiltration capacity, you know. So there's just some obvious perks and benefits from that. Ergonomics, change, weighing out options. People don't want to change. If I did what my dad did at Princeton Nurseries back in the late 50s, I would still be pulling trees out of the ground with horses and platforms. So probably in a competitive market, I'd get it handed to me pretty quick. So, and I'm old school. I'm as stubborn as they come, and I can tell you that, but I've been on a pick and a shovel most of my life. So when I see if the change is good, then we're going to make it. And through technology, you have to think about that for your employees. You want to be more productive. Would you rather use a pick or would you rather use an air hammer, an air shovel? I can tell you, and I could show you in 5 minutes, you'd throw that pick in the weeds over there. So you got to be thinking about stuff like that. Hey, there we go. So 2 years ago, I had my water truck on the left and I upgraded to some automation, water tank. So you got to think like this, but you know, so quickly, like we travel all over the country, trenching, flooding, injuring the roots, provoking fibrous root growth, stabilizing the pressures in the plant, and preparing it to be moved. And we can control the water loss in the plant by doing so and redeveloping and injuring the roots. And that tree's going to die. You just cut the roots. Well, here again, it's not true. But so this specific trip, we were in North Carolina watering in the morning, and when in the afternoon was in South Carolina watering pines. Jumped in that truck and took off. So you want to skill your people, a driver's license. I don't feel that I'm special. I've held a CDL driver license and I'm handicapped slightly, but I still drive a tractor trailer. So I don't feel special because I'm driving a tractor trailer. It's just what the job is. Get your people in the truck, educate them to operate it safely, understand the vehicle. They can be so much more productive. I've traveled harvesting trees, and I can, in my sleep, I could tell you how many cents a gallon that I was able to get it down to by having a 2,000-gallon water truck and the wheels to roll it from point A to point B. So change your thinking, skill your people, make them the best. I'd rather have less people with higher skills and pay them more and demand that production and level of excellence out of them. But you have to, as employers, have to give them the tools to do so. That was me on the left. Just kidding. That was David. That's who that was. But so that's how they did it back in the day. So we have to change. We have to think about change. And that's how we're doing it now on the right, which is pretty easy. It's less damage to the tree, less tugging and pulling and things of that nature. Weighing out options. That's David right there when he was younger. But you have to pull your people in to make these changes. And that's the most important part. I'm very blessed to have a very young group of men that have a desire and a passion to be the very best. That overrides everything. It's not about money. It's not about this. Why do you get up and go every day? Is it because of the money? Or is it because of a passion and desire for what you do? That's the most important thing about what you do and how you teach your recruits coming on. That's kind of how we do it. We're old school. The gloves are off around our shed, our facility. So we don't sugarcoat much, and we get after it and we demand that. I expect a lot out of myself, and I don't ask anybody to do anything that I wouldn't do. And they are the same way. So I'm very blessed to have probably one of the most incredible young group of men doing what we do, because we're a small company doing a lot of things, but we believe in the innovation and are receptive to change. So I listen to this. There's no dumb answer. I listen to everything that everybody has to say at More Than Trees. Even the stuff I don't want to hear. Look at the picture on the right up there. Red clay dirt. Look at the roots all the way to the bottom. Hell, we quit digging and still digging roots. Red clay. Look at the organic matter around the top. These are like obvious things that we all need to consider. That plant, look at the roots around that plant. Look at the red clay. Look at the balance, the percentage of organic matter. So I'm not going to get into the plant physiology part of it today, but powerhouse. The plant is a powerhouse. It's the master brain. When you get into botany and plant physiology, and when you think about all that's going on in the plant, if you can complete that life cycle and replenish that plant with what it needs, it's a powerhouse, and it'll do this for you. That's red clay. That's not fabricated. That's just what it is. So those are things that we see all the time. I would love for the arborist community and anybody else to come to the field. I would encourage you to do that. Here again, we're just red clay moving 55-foot trees down the interstate, whatever, and they're living and they're doing great. And you have to look at the roots, root patterns, soil type, study that. Organic matter, there again, it's not loaded with organics. But it's a vital part of, and the percentage that you read about most of the time are 5 and 10%. You got to have that, because that can be your powerhouse. Neil had mentioned something earlier about some soil that he noticed in the last couple of weeks in another country. And when you can get that manufacturing like that, it'll just go and go and go. But once you get it started, we have to learn, like I to people all the time, they're spending money on all these organic materials, liquid microbes, and they inoculate the tree and they spend all this money and they go over there with a hose and just soak the tree, drown it, just keep it underwater. I'm like, what little bit I've read, that you're going to kill that, or it's going to move to an environment that it can thrive in, right? So you're spending all this money and you're just washing it downstream, or the environment you're trying to create, you're pushing it to another environment that it can actually thrive in. So less more often. Think about things like that. There we go. Let's talk, right? Love to talk. Took me 15 minutes to get my grandson to give me some of that ice cream, but I was able to convince him after a while. So it might take a while to get your point across, but just stay after it. So got to have a little fun there. Just, that's an art, but I've never been so driven about an industry as the green industry, the aftercare, the respect that I have for so many people, the years of dedication. David, I've known you for a lot of years, man, and my hat's off to you. I have a lot of respect for you for the dedication that you put into this stuff. When you open a book, you want to shut it. The more you read, the less you know, but it's people like you that inspire people like me because I want to be better at what I'm doing. So you want to do stuff like this, but it's all rendered useless if it's not successful. And there's a lot of moving parts internally in that tree, internally and externally, that we can all get better. We can all improve on what we're doing. That's a wow factor. Yeah, it's pretty cool, but it's not as cool as the aftercare of taking care of these plants. I moved that tree from a farm in Loganville, Georgia. It's been 20 years ago. And I root pruned that tree, hoping I'd get a chance to move it. And when I was in there, half the ball was clay, the other half was pure river sand, like hourglass sand. So this is the cool thing about what we do if we have an open mind. I root pruned it with no sale. I didn't have it sold, but I was going to root prune it because I knew there was lighter soil. Didn't do much to it. Almost left it to die almost, right? But it was in a low area. So 4 years later, I get a phone call to move two of them out of the same field. So I went in there to dig this tree, and of course, half the ball is clay, half the ball is sand. And all that pore space, there was fiber roots, filled every bit of that pore space on the right side. So I moved a 14-foot root ball from Loganville, Georgia to Knoxville, Tennessee, and it looked like it had been poured out of concrete. So given enough time, you can do anything when it comes to a tree, given enough time and the right knowledge and technique behind it. So that tree looks like that today, thriving, pretty much neglected after the first 2 years. There's nobody over there doing anything to it that I know of. And I took that picture, I think, 2 years ago. And it just is a pillar of health. 14-inch caliper.
And how are you root pruning that?
With just a shovel and a saw. Yeah, I mean, I'm working on something right now. It's going to be on a pneumatic hammer. It's got a, I'm trying to get the forged. Nobody wants to manufacture one forged bit. So we're going to get it done. So we broke one already. So when we have it forged, it won't break. But so that would be nice to roll up on an excavator, cut the roots clean and all that stuff. But I'm old school, so I'll make you dig it by hand and go around there and saw cut everything. So, and then the repair is so much quicker when you can do that.
Yeah.
It's still old school, labor intense. There's no shortcut to that. Fracturing.
I don't know how good you can see that, but that's the fracture machine. It's fractured the ground and he's pushing fluid through the soil. And it creates all these pore spaces. You can see it bubbling up. So quickly you can get into the soil, that's very hard soil, and move the solution through the fissures that you create via the fracturing machine. And at least get the party started. That's one way to get it started. So for the landscape industry, or the aftercare, you can go in on a palatial estate and treat that red oak, that cherry tree, that dogwood more specifically. So you don't have to tear up the whole yard. So you can go in, you can treat shrubs, you can treat turf. There's turf tools for this. And the turf tool is actually good for ground cover because they grow on rhizomes. So you go in 9 inches, you fracture and it all gets pulled up anyway. So Great tools to feed every aspect of a landscape property. But you don't have to tear the whole yard up. So most people aren't going to go in the yard and say, well, I'm just going to do the easiest thing. I'm going to throw some, sea kelp on it. That's a safe thing to do. Don't be safe. Get out there and bust that ground up and get that party started. Usually right here underneath that tree, 4 or 5 foot down, is a plethora of minerals that plant needs. So we have to promote that root system to go down and get those. And it ends up being that the way we treat trees after installation pushes the root out and follows the surface. So you can actually reintroduce that plant to the mineral base all the food is right there. It just hasn't developed the roots to get there. So this machine will do it. So you can change the soil. You can accelerate what used to take many, many years through the automation that's available nowadays. You just have to, like I said, I can go in and change, I can treat this red oak or this dogwood and be specific and do your calculations, do your soil tests, calculate your cubic yards of soil. If we're professionals, we have to collect the data in order to get the information. DNA is a big part of it. I might do something that heals me. You do the same amount and it doesn't heal you. So we don't even look at that. A lot of people don't look at the DNA of plants and how things metabolize and all that stuff, but at least you can be more specific. You can level up the soil, via the fracturing machine and get the minerals in there where this thing can get started. So in closing, I would like to say this is more on a personal note from what I've seen through all the years, and I think it can be arranged, but I'd love to see the nursery industry connect with the arborist community and connect with the landscape community. Great intentions on the landscape community. They're overwhelmed, they're overworked, and their interest isn't your interest. The farmers, tree inspections all the time, fertilizer, watering, plowing, the whole 9 yards. They got it going on. You can't sell a bag of seed to one of our customers and throw it over a field and say, see you in 20 years. We need each other. And there's a gap for the arborist community to connect with the landscape industry and develop a hell of a revenue base. Because not all the landscape industry has the love and the passion that the arborist community has for the aftercare. The knowledge is extensive in your group, but we need to blend all of those together because I think there's a benefit for everyone. And the bottom line is customers don't want to hear it. I don't like to point fingers. I don't sell a job without having this conversation with my clients. And if you don't want to understand it and you don't want to appropriate the funds and you don't want to put the people that have accountability to take care of this, then I don't want to do the job. I don't need the money that bad. And it's a posture you have to take to show people that you're serious about what you're doing. Because I'm not going to point fingers, right? And this is where there's a gap in the total community that we work in, and we need to connect these communities together because we need the farmer and we need the customer to buy the tree, right? To install this new project. We need the landscaper to install it, but we need the landscaper to pass the torch to the arborist community that understands the aftercare extensively. Now, I'll train anybody or I'll teach anybody anything that I know. But we did a project, I'll tell this quickly, way south, got to the end, it became a warranty issue. And the architect says to me, I need your warranty policy. I said, after this 3-ring circus that I've seen go on, I said, there is no warranty policy here. He goes, what do you mean? I said, you're going to have to put somebody capable and willing to take care of this property with passion, ownership, and wants to be here. And these are hard conversations that I think we have to have in our industry. But I took a kid that just come out of school. I was talking a foreign language to him. And I looked at him and I said, "Are you going to take care of this property?" I said, "Because otherwise this will be the shortest conversation that we ever had." He goes, "I promise you, Mr. Covell." I said, "Okay." 1 year later, not one plant on this property died because that kid took a personal interest in the things that we were trying to teach him or stay ahead of. And some things are always beyond our control, but that was from passion and the willingness to take care of a property by somebody that never did it before. So that shows me that we're coachable, we're teachable, and we shouldn't have the loss that we're having. But somehow we need to connect the tree farm to the landscaper and everybody in between there and build these relationships. But that's just on a personal note from what I see and what I hear from, I just dig the tree, but I hear it from both ends. I dug it. You asked me to dig it. I dug it. I loaded it on a truck better than anybody in the country. What you did to it after that is beyond my control. So I don't want to get in those conversations. I want to build those relationships. I don't want the customer. I don't want to be known as the highest lost tree company in the world. I want to be known for the best tree company in the world. So I think there's room there to discuss that in the communities, tree farmers, the arborist community, and landscape contractors, because I think we're missing out. I really do. But anyway, I appreciate your time. And yes, ma'am.
I do have one question from our virtual listeners. They said, after root pruning, how do you encourage or promote fibrous root growth?
Basically, I've done it without fertilizer. I think the mineral base in the soil and what the plant's trying to produce can produce the things in that environment that can grow the fiber roots that you need. So I like the organic approach as far as the liquid fertilizers and the vermicast. And I've seen root, the tree knows what to do. It's gonna go. If you just water it, watch what happens. If you want to promote a little more root growth, there's so many different products out there. Less, more often approach is what we like to do. You can eat the whale one piece at a time. It's hard to swallow it whole. If you hit any cell with anything too heavy, it's going to reject it. So we like to use things that are chelated. You know, I did some stuff this past year with ocean product, and the results that I found were just incredible. So I encourage ocean products. Bioplex Organics is good. Southern Organics has a lot of great stuff. The knowledge behind Ron is incredible. So less, more often, you know, but really your water is so key in all of this because the plant knows what to do. So
from the same listener, John, he says, after root pruning, what type of soil do you use to backfill? Indigenous, compost, or loam?
I leave the ditch open. The air will prune that root, and if you keep the ditch open, it'll increase temperatures a little lower in the soil. So down deeper into that root mass, you'll pull out more fibrous roots. So I keep the ditch open. I use the ditch as a bucket to collect water, because I'm not going to go over there and, you know, I'll fill the trench with 200 or 300 gallons of water, and I'll go 3 days later and go back to it. I mean, the plants are so tough. I've done some, you know, just open the ditch, water it. If you fertilize, I like to do liquid. So I like to do the top of the root ball and fill the trench with water, and every now and then lightly mist the fertilizer on top of the root ball. So it works into the root ball and it'll be taken up. But we're as abusive as you can get. And I'll prove it to you. I root pruned a tree in South Carolina one time, opened a ditch. We were digging a tree for a project in Buckhead. So we were up there. So while we were there, I took one tree that was over there by itself, knew it would never be dug, went over there with a backhoe and just bluntly ripped the ground up, cut a trench around it. So I'd flood it every time we were taking care of the customer's tree, but basically left it to die. 6 years later, I went back and The trees that were en route that never had been touched were 15 foot shorter than the tree that I had bluntly root pruned. So you tell me, so we abuse everything as much as we can. The plant is tough. It's the water. There's enough minerals in the soil the plant will take in and produce and reproduce those fibers. You can enhance it with organics. I'm usually in a temporary situation. Ron calls me the Grim Reaper, but I have a product blended. It covers everything in it. I'm in a temporary hole. I'm root pruning it on short notice, short term, everything. So I use an affordability blend that gives me everything. Now, on the other end, when it goes into its final location and pull out no stops, use everything organic that you can use. Make sure it's got higher mineral contents and stuff like that. But on our end, we're just so abusive. And it works. I mean, it works. And we've done it time and time again. So I wouldn't be afraid to do anything like that. I mean, we just water. I mean, for many years, I never really did a lot with fertilizer. I just trenched the tree and watered the ditch, and nature now I understand a little bit more what's going on, but so I wouldn't overdo anything less more often.